A food forest is a man-made system that replicates a natural forest but produces us a yield all year round. It's predominantly with perennial plants. It's planted using companion plants in guilds and polycultures. A food forest is a highly diverse system comprising of 7 layers which you find in a natural forest. In a monoculture, farmers need to use pesticides, fertilizers and herbicides to grow their crops, but in a natural forest, humans aren't going in putting in pesticides, herbicides and fertilizers. The system supports itself, and if you go in any natural forest, it's teeming with life. It's got loads of trees, shrubs, ground covers, animals, and in the old times, humans would use these forests for everything they needed, whether it was food to build their houses, medicine, energy such as timber. So what we want to do is replicate what happens in a natural forest and plant this in a way that gives us what we need all year round in one place. What do we grow in a food forest? People often associate a food forest with food. Well, obviously we want to grow food, but it's not the only thing that we need. We can grow nuts such as these almonds and hazelnuts, berries such as this gooseberry tree and these strawberries, fruit such as this apple tree and this peach tree, alcohol such as wine from these grapevines and this juniper berry for gin, animal fodder such as this tagazaste and this fig tree, perennial vegetables such as this asparagus and fennel, spices such as this chase tree that creates pepper and this sumac. We can grow trees to create flour from things like this carob tree, which creates bean pods which you can use for flour and to make chocolate. Firewood such as this ash tree and this willow tree, timber such as this cedar tree and this paulownia, building materials such as this broom for a thatch roof and these prickly pear leaves for helping to build natural floors and make them waterproof, and blackberry vines for rope. Tea such as this sage and this tilia tree. Cordials to add to your water such as this elderberry and pomegranate. Medicine such as this wormwood and this Persian lilac. Herbs such as these chives and oregano. Oils for cooking such as olive oil from this olive oil tree and this pecan for pecan oil. Fibers for clothing such as the silkworm from the mulberry tree and our sheep wool, as well as rugs and clothing from the sheep skins. Dyes such as this Himalayan indigo and this yarrow. So what we want to try and do is plant all of these things so we can get as much of the things that we need to live from our own land. A food forest should comprise of 7 layers that exist in a natural forest. And they start with the taller trees, which are the canopy trees, such as this tilia in our chicken food forest. And this cork tree, which produces a very good insulation for floors, ceilings, and capping your wine bottles. And then below the canopy layer will be a sub-canopy, such as this persimmon tree, which is a smaller tree that can have a little bit of shade from the main canopy, and this creates a lovely fruit persimmon. Or this damson plum, which is used to make prunes. Then we have a shrub layer, such as this strawberry tree, which is like a tree that can grow as a tree, or if left to nature, it will grow as a shrub, a small tree or a shrub. And this particular one, strawberry tree, produces this nice fruit, which you often use to make liqueurs. And this quince shrub, again, could be a small tree, but left to itself, it would be a shrub. And we use these quinces to make a lovely jam. Then we have climbers, which climb up the trees, such as this grapevine, and these kiwis above me, and passion fruit. And under the shrub layer in a food forest, we have a herbaceous layer, which are not trees. These are generally like herbs or small little bushes, such as this curry plant and this rosemary bush, which is growing under this dogwood. Then across the ground in a forest, you have a ground cover, such as this mint growing in the swale. And this lovely ground cover of oregano could be classed as a herbaceous layer because it does grow a bit higher, but I like to call it a ground cover because it really does spread and cover the ground. Like for instance here, it's growing in between this apricot tree that has this rui underneath, baby sage, and other plants with a few brambles coming through that we need to come and weed out. And then underground, we have a root layer, such as this horseradish, which we can use as a fertilizer, but also to make horseradish sauce or wasabi from the roots. And then we have comfrey, also used as a fertilizer, growing underground. Officially, forests have 7 layers, but there is an 8th, and they are the fungi that live underground on decaying matter in the soil, on the roots, and they have fruits, which are mushrooms, such as these turkey tails. Over here I've got a white plant growing out of a little pond. I wonder if that's another layer altogether. Anyhow, in nature has all of these layers, and that way it can harvest more sunlight in a small area and therefore grow more in a small area. And that's what we're trying to replicate in our food forests, planting with all of these layers in mind, and every plant should produce a yield for us. A food forest is made up of guilds and polycultures. So what is a guild? A guild is a bunch of plants working together to support each other. And the way we like to design this is by starting off with one tree. So each guild would normally have one tree, and we call that a keystone tree, such as this avocado. So we want to think about what pollinators pollinate our keystone tree, and then we want to attract those. So we want to plant plants that attract those pollinators, such as this bottlebrush tree, that when you walk past it, it sounds like someone's chainsawing because it's so loud of all the bees all around it. We want to think about what diseases the tree gets, and if there are any plants that can help them, such as this wormwood that helps with the leaf curl on the peach trees. But sometimes you don't plant something to help the disease, you just don't plant other plants near it that get the same disease. We want to think about what nutrients the tree gets, such as this pear tree, and plant dynamic accumulators next to it. So these are plants that mine nutrients and bring them up to their leaves, which can drop on the floor and then make that available to the tree, such as this comfrey planted here. And these strawberries planted around this pear tree, which also give us a fruit. The other nutrients that all plants need a lot of is nitrogen. So we must plant some nitrogen fixing trees. And these trees, such as this Tagazaste, have nitrogen fixing bacteria that live on the roots. And these actually get nitrogen from the air and make it available in the leaves. When the leaves drop, it fertilizes everything around it with nitrogen. In our guild, we want to think about what pests the tree gets and plant things that repel them, such as this neem tree here. Usually plants that repel pests are smelly plants, such as this rose geranium planted next to this apricot tree. This sage underneath this hazel. In our guilds, we also want to plant weed suppressors, such as these aromatic herbs, thyme and oregano, around this pomegranate tree, which also stack functions as aromatic herbs are smelly and repel pests. Another way to suppress weeds are with things like lemongrass that have these bulbs that spread and act as a barrier to stop weeds passing. And these are also very good in paths and borders. So a guild is a keystone tree with plants around it that support it based on your knowledge of the tree. And those companion plants should occupy the 7 layers of a forest, and ideally each species should be a perennial plant that produces a yield, such as this avocado tree and this blueberry bush. And a polyculture is simply more than one guild designed together. We can have 3 guilds together, such as this avocado tree guild, the strawberry tree guild, and the jujuberry tree behind me. And these have been designed together so their companion plants support each other. And that is a polyculture, more than 2 guilds together. And a food forest is simply multiple polycultures, all planted next to each other and designed together so they all support each other in one ecosystem. What are some of the other design concepts of a food forest? We want to plant predominantly perennial vegetables, such as these asparagus and these strawberries, and obviously trees. Perennial plants are plants that you plant once and live for multiple years, unlike annuals such as vegetables that you have to keep planting every single year. A natural forest will always be predominantly perennial plants which are accompanied by a fungi-dominated soil, as perennial plants have a symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizal fungi that live in the soil. Throughout my farm, I like to plant trees and shrubs where you can harvest the fruit and eat them straight away along the paths, such as these strawberries and this apricot. And it means at all times of year, wherever I'm walking, there's something for me to eat. But we also have lots of trees and shrubs where you have to harvest and then process, such as this almond here. And since we can't just harvest it and eat it as we're walking along, we plant it further away from the path. And this also includes other things such as olive trees like this one behind me, where you have to harvest and process, as well as nuts, which you have to harvest and then open the shells. It doesn't make sense to have these on the path since you can't snack on them as you walk around. I like to include flowers along the edges of the food forests, such as this elderberry and over here this rose, because these are areas that people walk past quite a lot, and flowers attract beneficial insects, but it just makes it nice to look at as you walk around. Also along the edges, I like to plant big trees that grow fast and create a lot of shade, so that when I'm walking past in the paths, I can enjoy the shade in the hot summers. And within the food forest, I like to design in some open spaces where we can grow cover crops to grow mulch, spaces to put animals such as chickens, and crops such as this whole row of goji berries with oregano underneath. Areas for living such as this container converted into an accommodation inside the chicken food forest. Grey water systems with aquatic plants, and annual vegetables such as these broccolis. Another design concept that we have to consider is wind. Wind dries the soil and damages the plants. So here I've got one of my many windbreaks around my food forests, and this one is cedar, which I planted when it was just tiny 8 years ago. Out of sight, out of mind. Basically, anything in your food forest that is somewhere you walk past every day, you're going to take good care of it. And things that are far away in a field where you don't walk or see on a daily basis has a higher chance of dying, getting thirsty, getting overtaken by weeds or invasive species. So I like to try and design my food forest all over my living areas, along the paths that I walk along. And that way, everywhere that I move and live looks beautiful, and it all gets taken care of because I am observing and looking after it every single day. One of the things to consider is a food forest is extremely complex to the high diversity that you have. For example, here in my plantations, I have over 300 varieties of edible trees and shrubs. And that means it's really hard for people to help you. So we have volunteers and people coming and going. And if you send them away to get blueberries, they come back with poisonous berries. You send them away to weed a bed, they put out plants that you've been caring for years because they didn't recognize them. If you send people out to get rhubarb, they can't find all the different spots we planted them. So in summary, I think a food forest is best to be kept quite small due to the amount of complexity and work involved, and to have it around your living areas and paths and places that you're going to interact with on a daily basis, so you could take care of it, because it's very easy to miss a plant when it's dying and needs some tender love and care, or it's very easy to miss a harvest when you've got so many different types of plants. And I don't think a food forest is our solution for creating a lot of food to sell to supermarkets. It's really ideal for a family to create food for themselves and to share a surplus with friends and family. But one of the most cool things that we can do in a food forest is collect different fruits. What we might notice in the supermarkets is there's a very small selection of fruits, and those are because those are the ones that harvest easy, transport easily and store well. But there are hundreds of other fruits that either go off about an hour after you pick them, are difficult to harvest, or don't transport very well. So what we can do in our food forest is collect as many of these as possible, so we have fruit available all year, such as this chokeberry here and this medlar tree here. We want to design our food forest thinking about space and time. So the first thing to do is design your food forest with how you want it to look in 100 years. And I think we need to plant for the future. So we want to plant trees that are slow growing and long living and produce a great yield. A good example is this carob tree. They can live 1,000 years. Olive trees, but they're slow growing. This one here I planted 8 years ago. So we can design how it looks in 100 years and then redraw that to scale how it looks in 30 years. And we'll have lots of space to plant more things, such as the cherry tree behind me and the strawberry tree here to my right. We can design those in to grow and take that space for the first 30 years. But then we can redraw our design for how it would look in 10 years, and we can plant short-lived perennials such as blueberries and other bushes, or we can plant pioneer species trees to grow and create biomass and nutrients for our food forest. And then for each of those trees, the long-lived trees, the short-lived trees, and the in-between space fillers, we need to design guilds by choosing companion plants, putting them together in polycultures, and then planting out our food forest. But when we plant out, our plants will be small, and some of them we need to propagate and spread. So we'll have lots of space in the first couple of years, and we can fill that space in time with annual vegetables. So for example, this new long row here, to the untrained eye, looks like a row of garlic. But garlic isn't a perennial vegetable and isn't something that fits in my food forest. What I actually have here is a long line of asparagus and strawberries. Because they've just been planted, they're really small. We've got alternate strawberry, asparagus, strawberry, asparagus, strawberry, asparagus, all along 2 lines. But since we had to weed this area, mulch it, compost it, and the plants were so small, we used the space we have in time to plant garlic. So this year we have a garlic crop, but by next year the strawberries would have spread and the asparagus will start to come through. I would like to invite you to come and stay in our food forests. We have residential courses here on permaculture, practical permaculture courses, food forest courses, and natural building. If you've got any questions or comments about any of the topics we've covered, please place them in the comment box below. And do enjoy our other videos, such as our farm tour, our latest video, and click here to subscribe so you can stay up to date on our videos.